welcome. We're toward the end of the last day. It's great to be here again. My name is Cindy. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the National Museum of Mathematics. In case you don't know it, there's a picture of it on the screen. We are located in Manhattan. We opened on 12/12/12. That makes this our 10th year. But that wasn't the first thing we did. The first thing we did was bring a traveling exhibit of mathematics to the World Science Festival in June 2009. I mention that because that first day, our very first debut in the public, happened on the 14th of June in 2009. So that's my tie to G4G14. Jump a few years later, and in 2019, we were very excited to welcome our 1 millionth visitor to the museum. We track attendance every day. Here you can see the 1 millionth visitor is in the red shirt. He's actually a school teacher who showed up with a bunch of kids. They were very happy to go home with a giant balloon that had 1 million on it. I know Martin Gardner was interested in numerology, so I'll just point out that the 10 to the 6th visitor arrived during the 6th month of the 6th year of operations. So with that, we decided that we should celebrate at 6 p.m. a couple days later on 6/6. And what we decided to do was a 1,000,000 millimeter march. To save you the conversion, I'll tell you that's a little more than a half mile. You can see the path, actually this didn't jump ahead, sorry. You can see the path on the left. The museum is up at the top. And we walked down Broadway, we circled around the iconic Flatiron Building, came back through the lovely Madison Square Park, and arrived back at our front door. We decided to have waypoints along the way where we would mark off how many millimeters people had walked, and we would try to have interesting mathematical numbers. And for that, I asked two number theorist friends, Manjul Bhargava and Alex Kontorovich, if they could come up with some interesting mathematical numbers that would be something we could share with the public. And turns out there's a lot of numbers that they liked between 1 and 1,000. Well, 1,000 millimeters is about 3 feet, so that didn't work out too well. The next challenge was they came up with bigger numbers, but some of them ended up being in the middle of Broadway with traffic. And so I really had to fight hard to convince them that as interesting as those numbers were, they were not good for a place for people to stop and talk. But ultimately, we came up with the 11 numbers you see there. And then what we wanted to do was have a stamp where people could get a stamp to show they'd been to each waypoint. And when we thought about what would be a fun stamp that the public would like, we decided a pie stamp would be great. And so I asked our retail manager to please buy a bunch of pie stamps. And much to my surprise, she came back and told me there was no such thing, which I didn't believe. So I looked myself online, and there was indeed no such thing. You can't buy a pie stamp, except now you can, because we made them. So we did have people going, and you can see these are all the different numbers. You can see them on our website as well. We thought it would be fun to make t-shirts, so everybody who participated got a t-shirt. We had a volunteer at each of those waypoints to talk about the math of those numbers. We decided to have signs and balloons that we spread around the neighborhood so people would know where they were. And here we have the start, that's 0, and you can see me and my colleague Tim Nissen, who's here as well, and a line of people. There were literally a line of people waiting to get started. We stamped everyone's cards as planned. Some people wanted other things stamped, as you can see by the little girl's arm. Now here's Manjul, he's at our first waypoint. And after a while, I left the 0 point and wandered around to see how things were going. And what I saw when I got to that first point where Manjul was a huge crowd of about 40 people standing around him, not all of whom had come to MoMath to participate in the march. But you know, it's New York City. There's balloons, there's a giant sign, there's a guy in a t-shirt, there's a crowd, people stop. And everybody had their phones out, and Manjul was telling them to type that number into their phone and then try multiplying it by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, and by 6, and see what happened. And there was a nice gasp in the crowd as people started doing that, and I would encourage you to do that too. So you'll see we had several people, different volunteers. Now, if you're observant, you'll notice in this picture that the person on the left still has balloons on their chair, the people on the right do not. You can see what happened in this photo. Alex Kontorovich is on the left. If you look carefully at the chair, you will see popped balloons, because one thing that we discovered that we didn't know before is that balloons are illegal in Madison Square Park. Nobody was arrested. A couple of balloons did sacrifice their lives. So here we are at the end, and you can see here's one little girl who was very excited that she had gotten her card fully stamped. Hundreds of people ended up participating. The card turned into an invitation for a great party. That is the 1 millionth visitor who came back to celebrate with us. We gave him a certificate. We do great parties. We have the only Voronoi dance floor in the world, I think. But even though the party was a lot of fun, actually my favorite moment came after the event, when I got this email from someone I didn't know who had participated in the march and said that this event, like many MoMath events, really helped people love mathematics. And I think that's very much in keeping with the spirit of Martin Gardner and his life and his work, because how many people did he help love mathematics? And that's really encapsulates the museum's mission. If you want to take the 1,000,000 millimeter march yourself, thanks to Tom Crawford, Tom Rocks Math, and Peter Winkler, who was kind enough to guide him through the walk, if you go to tom.momath.org, you can enjoy the 1,000,000 millimeter march yourself. And if you're getting a gift bag, you will have your very own pie stamp. Thank you.